We're going to start with our first activity in our complete sentences with varied lengths book, and that first activity will be green light, red light. Here's a shrunken version of the chart for us to use to apply this skill. For this activity, the students will need a green and a red pencil and a passage in order to mark with green lights and red lights for complete sentences. When students learn this skill, it's not going to correct all their sentence problems. It's going to identify where a sentence will begin and end, where they have their capitals and their stops. And it will also help fix capitalization for the beginning of sentences. The whole goal here is to teach green light, red light so that they can identify the sentences in their writing. Doesn't mean they're complete. Let's go to the first step. And we're going to circle all the stops. And the stops are periods, question marks, or quotation marks. How do we do that? We start at the end of the paper and we make a circle. Notice there was no period at the end there. Whether there is a period or not, you're going to always put a circle at the end because you know at the end of my, and in this case, paragraph, there has to be a stop. So I know there has to be a stop at the end. I'm going to put a circle there. Then I'm going to take my red pencil and I'm going to slide it backwards, right to left, and I'm going to go up the passage. Why? Because when you go backwards, it's easier to look for something in writing. Sometimes when you start going forward, you are trying to look for stops to circle, but what happens is you start reading and you forget what you're doing. So this is an editing trick, many times to do things backwards in the writing when you're trying to just find certain items. So we're going to go backwards. First you put a circle at the end, whether there's a stop or not, because we know we need one. Then we will go backwards, and whenever we see a stop, we will put a circle. So we're going backwards. When I first do this with students, I like to slide the pencil and tell the kids to tell me when to stop. So I would slide the pencil, and when I hit a stop, they go, stop! And then we circle it. Go all the way through, and we have all of our stops. We started from the end, put a circle, went backwards, and put our red circles every time we came to a stop. We'll go to step 2 and we'll circle the first letter of the text green. So we'll go to the text, the first letter, we'll circle green because we know when we first start writing, it needs to start with a capital. Now go to step 3 and we have after every red light, circle the first letter green. So I go to a red light, after that red light, I circle the first letter green because I know after a stop, begins a new sentence and it should be capitalized. So here's my red light, that will be green. After my red, green. After my red, green. After my red, green. And after my red, green. And we have our ending there. Finally, the last step is check your lights and make corrections. That means the green light should have a capital. The red light should have a stop. So let's go through and look at our greens. Our first green light we go to, we look at the letter, it's a lowercase. I know in the green circle I need a capital, so I put a capital. Go to the next letter, I see it's a lowercase, I need a capital. I'm going to each one of my green circles. If they don't have an uppercase, then I'm going to put an uppercase there. Notice in my next circle it already has a capital, so I'm good. And I keep going through and I find all of my green circles, and if they need a capital, then I put the capital there. Finally, I go to my red circles, and if there's not a stop, then I'm going to put a stop in. Notice the only red circle that I can fix is the last one. I'll read that sentence. Without hesitating, I stomped on every single flower bud I could see. I think I'm going to put an exclamation point there because it sounds like I'm pretty upset and angry. Notice that's the only place that I fix the stops is at the end there. The rest have to be in place in my writing. So what does that mean? That means that green light, red light will identify the beginning and end. Visually, I can see the green and I can see the red of my sentences to check for complete sentences. It will also help me fix any capitals that are missing after I put a stop or a stop at the end of my writing. This is the only way this activity is going to help fix these sentences so that they are complete. Meaning green light, red light is the first skill they need to learn in order to just have the boundaries of a sentence with the green and the red so you can see where sentences begin and end. And it can help make a few subtle changes like add capitals after stops or put a stop at the end of the piece of writing. Other than that, it's not going to fix sentences, whether they may be run-ons or fragments. That will come in the following activities. So what's the focus of this activity? To identify the sentences, where they begin, where they end, and to add capitals to some of them and a stop at the end if it wasn't in place. That's it. That's green light, red light. You will see that all the following activities in this sentence section at this sentence level need to begin with green light, red light. Once we have green light, red light to identify the boundaries of a sentence, then we will teach the skill how to fix fragments, run-ons, or combining sentences. Let's go to the next skill. And the next skill is called varied sentence lengths. You have your steps that you would show your students, and you have a passage where you're going to apply the steps learned in this skill. You want to show your students, boys and girls, we are now going to start a new lesson so that we can have complete sentences with varied lengths. Step 1, check for complete sentences, green light, red light. So we're going to do green light, red light again. Then the next step, and that's what's new in this lesson, is we're going to count words and fix the graveyard sentences. A graveyard sentence can be a fragment, a run-on, or choppy sentences. These are sentences that should be dead to you, the writer. You don't want those sentences. First, identify that they exist, and that's what this activity is going to do. So our activity today is for us to count the words and find if there's any graveyard sentences. For this activity, students will need a red and green pencil. First thing they will do is put their red and their green lights on their page. Remember, start at the end, circle the red light, then go backwards, and you will add all your red lights whenever you come to a stop. After our red lights, we will take out a green pencil and add our green lights. Remember, you always start at the beginning, circle the first letter of the passage for a green light, go to every red light, and make a green circle after the red light. We go back and we check our green lights and red light. All of our green lights have capitals, so we don't need to fix those. And our red light at the end does have a stop. And we now have our beginning and ending for all of our sentences in this passage. The next step, we're going to count the words in the sentences. This is such a great strategy, I can't begin to tell you. When you have students who write sentences that are too long, and you try to show them this by reading it and saying, look how many words are in this sentence, look how long it's taking me to read these sentences, they go back and they continue to do it. What I found in order for students to see if their sentences are too short or too long is I just have them count the words. So what we're going to do in our next step is, step 2, we're going to count the number of words in each sentence. We go through and we are counting each word as we go through our sentence. And after we count, when we hit the red light, we stop, and then we place the number of words that were in that sentence above the green light. So in this first sentence, there were 56 words. I can't begin to tell you. When kids count the words and they see something like 56, they go, wow, that's a lot. It may be too many. Typically, at your grade levels, you're going to see longer sentences can range anywhere from 13 to maybe your low to mid-20s, and we're talking about 56 words here. They have a number to gauge this with. Not just read the sentence, don't you think that's too long? Many children don't. They'll say, no, it's fine to me. Let's count the words in the second sentence. Start with the green light, count each word, and when you get to the red light, stop and record the number on the green light. This second sentence had 33 words. And we will follow for the last. Start at the green light, count each word, stop at the red light, go back to the green light, and record the number of words, 32. Students may see, wow, I have 56 words, 33 words, 32 words, but I want this to hit home. Not only do I want to give them a number, and if you go past that number, it may be too much. I want to do something else with the words that we've counted in these sentences, and that is I want to graph them. This graphing is very powerful because we're taking these numbers and we're going to use them to show students how important different lengths of sentences in your writing are. That will help the pace of your writing. It gives it more style. So we've counted the sentences. Next, we will graph them. You will just put down the number of sentences on the bottom. So we have 1, 2, 3. Then on the graph itself, you will label the number of words. So notice on this graph, I have 1 to 6 words are in the sentence, 7 to 13, 14 to 19, and 20 and above. We'll go to the first sentence and say we had 56 words there. We're going to dot 20 and above. We had 33 words, 20 and above. Our third sentence was 32. So here's our third sentence and 20 above. Let's connect those dots together and look at that. It's a flat line. Writing should have a heartbeat. This writing is flat. That means it's dead. And when writing is dead, no one wants to read it. Snooze fest, snooze fest. Notice in the chart here for a different writing. Here's all of our dots for all of our sentences, and they were short and choppy. So we connected those lines together and we said, oh, look at that. Writing should have a heartbeat, and these sentences go in a straight line. They're all dead. What kind of sentences do we probably have here that we need to fix? Choppy sentences, sentence fragments many times. In this lesson, what did we do? We identified if sentences had different lengths by counting the numbers and then graphing them. If the sentences show dead writing, then we need to move on and fix those sentences. If the sentences are too long, then we're going to go to the overly long lesson and fix overly long sentences or run-ons. If the sentences are choppy, then we'll go to the choppy sentence lesson. We can learn the activities to fix overly long sentences, fragmented sentences, and choppy sentences. Our first activity is overly long sentences. Notice we have our steps here and the facing page, we have a passage. Let's follow the steps. Step 1, like every one of our sentence level activities, green light, red light, so we can identify the boundaries of the sentences. We have our green light, our red light. After our green light and red light, what's the next thing you do? You count the words, and we see we have 16 words, 32, and 19. On the overly long page in the booklet, you have the students slide this page underneath the sentence. And they're sliding the page so that all they're looking at is the and, so, but, because, then. And when they slide along each line on their page, when they come upon any of those words, they're going to highlight them with their yellow pencil. So notice I'm going along and I'm reading. I made a new friend today, and is one of our words. Her name is Jane, and she is so nice. Today was her first day of school because, there's one of the words, she moved from Vermont, and she seemed a little nervous as she walked into the classroom. Then I asked her to be my friend. We played at recess, and I introduced her to all of my friends, so we are all friends now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those words used in this passage. In step 4, we're going to cross out some of the highlighted words. Remember I said some. And then add periods and capitals. Look at your green light. Look at your red light of the first sentence. How many words do you have underlined? 2. You can have 1 in your sentence, which really isn't true, but at this point I tell them 1. You can have 1 in your sentence, no more than that. So let's go through and let's read the sentence. I made a new friend today, and we get to keep that. Her name is Jane. We're not going to keep the second one, so what do? We cross it out, put a period in front of it, and then a capital after it. Notice that. We're crossing out the yellow word, then in front of it is a period to end the sentence, and then we're going to, after the X, put a capital. What do? Cross out the yellow, put a period, write a capital. At this point I made a new friend today and her name is Jane. She is so nice. I have my green and my red to identify the next sentence. I look through, I have 2 yellow highlighted words. Let's go back and let's read it. Today was her first day of school because she moved to Vermont. What do? Cross it out, period, capitalize she. Today was her first day of school because she moved from Vermont. She seemed a little nervous. All right, so now we're starting out that new sentence. She seemed a little nervous as she walked into the classroom. Then, oh, look at this. It's a new sentence, so I can keep the word then there. So she seemed a little nervous as she walked in the classroom. Then I asked her to be my friend. Let's go to the next sentence. Find your green, find your red. All right, we're looking at these words. I notice I have 2 yellows. So what am I going to do? I'm going to cross out that second one. Let's read and then we'll cross out as we get to it. We played at recess and I introduced her to all of my friends. So we are all friends now. What are we going to do? Cross it out, put a period, capitalize. We are all friends now. We have broken up all these sentences, yet some of them may not be transitioning as smoothly as you want them to. Don't worry about that. We're teaching this skill right now of how to help children break apart those overly long sentences. But when you get down to the transition activities, you can then go back to this and add transitions where you want in these new sentences. After our overly long sentences, the next issue that we could have is run-ons. And run-ons are when you have 2 independent clauses in a sentence and you don't have a conjunction or any type of punctuation that connect them together. Many children may have a run-on because of subject pronouns. Let me give you an example. If I said, the boys bought some milk, it was sour, many times students will think that is a complete sentence. The boys bought some milk, it was sour. They don't realize that's 2 independent clauses because the subject pronoun it confuses them. So we're going to go back and we're going to help students that have run-on sentences that are caused by subject pronoun confusions. That's what this is all about. Let's go to our first step. You have your chart, which has the steps. Next to it, you have your run-on sentences passage in which we're going to fix these sentences because of the subject pronoun confusion. For this activity, the students will need a green, red, and a yellow pencil. Make sure that you have your run-ons chart displayed for the students to see, and we're going to look at the first step, circle the green lights and the red lights. So we know we always start with the red first, we go backwards, and we'll circle all of the red lights. Next, I'll start with my green lights. I check my red and green lights to make sure I have capitals and stops in each one. I'm set to go, they're fine. In step 2, the students will highlight the subject pronouns in the middle of a sentence. So they'll go to the green light. If there's a subject pronoun right at the beginning, they're not going to highlight that. But as they go through the sentence, if they see any subject pronouns, they'll highlight it. They'll use that little visual that has the sneakers on it for run-ons, and you'll see that they have the subject pronouns there. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Keep these words right underneath their passage. They can slide them along the sentence, and as they come upon any subject pronouns, they will highlight them. So they go through and, oh, there's our first one, we. I finally got to see the snow. We went to the mountains for my birthday. There was at least 6 inches of the fluffy white stuff covering the ground. There's our subject pronoun. It was soft and very cold. My mom called, "Wear your snow boots." As I hurled myself out the door, she, that's in the middle, she didn't know what she was missing by staying inside. So I have gone through each sentence. Notice up here I have the word I, but that's at the beginning of my sentence. I'm not going to underline that. I'm going on after the green light. I'm going after that, and if I see any subject pronouns, I saw one there. I went to my next sentence, and I underlined a subject pronoun, it, and I continued on in the rest of the passage to underline any subject pronouns that I saw in the middle of the sentences. That's our step 2. Let's go to step 3 for our run-on sentences. capitalize the subject pronoun. After we capitalize the subject pronoun, then we'll put a period in front of the subject pronoun. So we go to our subject pronoun. First, read what's before it. I finally got to see the snow. That makes sense. I is who's in that sentence. What about it? Finally got to see the snow. I'm going to put my capital there, then I put a period in front of it. I finally got to see the snow. We went to the mountains for my birthday. There was at least 6 inches of the fluffy white stuff covering the ground. That all makes sense. I get to the word it. Okay, what do I need to do? Capitalize it. Put a period in front of it. It was soft and very cold. Excellent. My mom called, "Wear your snow boots," as I hurled myself out the door. So everything sounds complete before I get to this yellow. She, okay, so what do I need to do? Capitalize it, put a period. Now watch what happens. I have the word she here. She didn't know what she was missing by staying inside. Uh-oh. Let's see if I need to capitalize this next she. She didn't know what. That doesn't make sense. That's why we're reading it before we get to the next pronoun. Sometimes the pronoun in the middle needs to stay there. She didn't know what she was missing by staying inside. So what do I have here? I go back and I look at the word she. Let's just ask the words ahead of this. Who or what is this about? She. What about it? Didn't know what. Does that make sense? Didn't know what. That didn't make sense. I have to finish that sentence. So I have to keep she in this sentence. Sometimes the pronouns don't make a new sentence. So we want to read what's before it to make sure who or what is the sentence about? What about it? Does that make sense? And in this case, this did not. We needed the remaining words to finish up that thought. So we had our subject pronoun to help us with run-on sentences. 2 independent clauses cannot go together. In this case, what we did was we just created new sentences. Again, everything is going to work in a progression. We found that we had sentences that were run-ons. Many times we discover that because they get to be pretty long. So what do? We go back and we're going to see if we have any subject pronoun problems for our run-ons. Are there other reasons for run-ons? Yes, but this is a great way for kids to figure out how to fix run-ons with subject pronoun issues. So we have worked on overly long sentences, we have worked on run-on sentences. Next, we're going to look for those short, choppy sentences. When students count those sentences and they realize they have a bunch of short, choppy sentences, we need to combine some of them together so that we can have some long and short sentences, different lengths in our writing. Let's go to our next activity to see how to do that. And that's our choppy sentences activity. You have next to the choppy sentences chart, a passage. Let's follow the steps in order to combine some of these sentences. The first step, whenever you're looking at the sentence level, is to do the green light, red light, and we're going to count the words. We have our step 1, where we had our green light, red light, and we counted the words. Step 2 is, are your sentences too short? Do you need to connect 2 sentences? So we'll go back and we'll look at those numbers, 7, 5, 5, 5, 9, 5, 5, 4, 7, 5, 5, yes. There's many sentences that are the same number, a lot of short sentences there, so we need to go back and connect some sentences together. As you're reading, you need to start chunking sentences together into 2s. You read a sentence, and the sentence right after it, you want to ask, what's the job of this sentence? Is this sentence adding or sequencing? Is it contrasting? Is it giving a reason? If that's the job of that second sentence, then I can use one of the words that will show that that's its job. For instance, adding or sequencing, we'll use the words and or then. The contrasting, but, yet, or, give a reason, because, so, for, they would use one of those words to connect the 2 sentences together. Notice there is a comma, and then you have the word, like comma, then. So the comma tells us, oh, here's the first half, here's the second half. If then is the job of the second sentence, where would it go? After the comma. We now go to our sentences we're going to read. We'll read them in 2s. If I think the second sentence is going to tell me the reason why, an opposite, or is going to sequence, then we can connect those two together using one of our words. My favorite food is macaroni and cheese. That sentence is telling you my favorite is macaroni and cheese. The second sentence is saying it reminds me of home. It's telling me the reason why it's my favorite food. So I'm going to use the word because. Because will be my word that will connect the two sentences. My favorite food is macaroni and cheese because it reminds me of home. What else do I need to do? Cross out the period and make the capital into a lowercase. So the word it is now going to have a lowercase I. Go to the next one. I remember the first time I tasted it. So this sentence is telling you about how you tasted it the first time. I was 6 years old. Is this telling me the reason why? No. Is this giving a sequence? No. Is this the opposite? No. So I'm going to continue on. Let's chunk the next two sentences. I had just fallen off my first bike. So this sentence is telling you how I fell off my first bike. My dad brought me in. Oh, so I'd fallen off my bike is telling you the first sentence there. The second sentence is telling you my dad brought me in. Is that telling me the reason why I fell off the bike? No. The opposite? No. It's telling me what happened next. It's sequencing. I had fallen off my bike, comma, then, and change my to lowercase and cross out the period. Then my dad brought me in. Let's go to the next one. He offered me a treat. So that sentence is about how I get something really great. I'm so excited. The next sentence says, I was still upset. So this is saying I'm upset. So let me see. The first sentence there, I'm excited because I get a treat because it's a treat. But the second sentence is I'm upset. Is that giving you a reason why or the opposite? Sounds like the opposite. So let's go back and look. One of our opposite words is but. So let's go back and put comma, but, cross out the period, and we're going to keep the uppercase I because I, when it's by itself, is always capitalized. So let's read that sentence. He offered me a treat, but I was still upset. Excellent. Let's go to the next sentence. He made me a bowl of macaroni and cheese. So that's where we're talking about macaroni and cheese. He's making the macaroni and cheese. The melted cheese warmed me. So he's making cheese, and I'm letting you know the melted cheese warmed me. That's not telling you why he made the cheese. It's not telling you the opposite. Those don't go together. So let's do the next one. The melted cheese warmed me. So now I'm letting you know the cheese warmed me. I got all warmed. And the next sentence is saying, I forgot my boo-boo. So I was warmed, and this sentence is saying I forgot my boo-boo. Is this telling you the reason why I forgot my boo-boo? You bet. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go and look at my reason words, and I could have because, so, or for. Let's try them out. The melted cheese warmed me, so soon I forgot my boo-boo. For soon I forgot my boo-boo. Because soon I forgot my boo-boo. I don't like any of those. They don't make sense. So we're not going to add anything there. The melted cheese warmed me, soon I forgot my boo-boo. Why did it make sense? And this is when you want to point out to kids, because you had the transition word soon. We connected all of our sentences together, and what do we have now? My favorite food is macaroni and cheese because it reminds me of home. I remember the first time I tasted it. I was 6 years old. I had fallen off my first bike. Then Dad brought me in. I don't know if then sounds right. What other word could we use? So that's sequencing there, but it's also telling me why my dad brought me in. So could I say, I had fallen off my bike, so Dad brought me in? We should use the word so. Rereading the whole piece and fixing or changing words that sound better is also a part of this process where you're taking the two sentences in isolation, adding a connector word if the second sentence has a job to tell about the first sentence. But then after you read the whole piece together, sometimes you may need to change up those words as well. Follow these steps so that you can help students who have choppy sentences combine some of the sentences together. We have learned all of the steps in our Complete Sentences with Varied Lengths flip book. So how does the book work? The first page has a number 1 on it, you always go to the first page. We're going to check for complete sentences using green light, red light, always. Then we turn to the next page. So when a student is at the sentence level, they would be flipping these pages to remind themselves what they need to do to edit and revise their sentences. Then we go to page 2. This is the second step. Count the words in your sentences. Fix any graveyard sentences. If you notice that most of your sentences, they're overly long, choppy, or have run-ons, then you need to fix them. What if the sentences were overly long? Then we would go to the overly long page and run-on page to fix those really long sentences. What if there's many short sentences? What will we use? The choppy sentence activity in order to combine some of the sentences together. I hope that your students and you find these concrete steps helpful to improve their sentence writing. In our next video, you will see sophisticated word choices. That's where we'll walk through the steps at the word level.